When I was 11 years old, I was growing up in Lafayette, Indiana, and our Sunday school class read through the book of Luke. It was after we finished reading through the book of Luke that I realized that Jesus had died for me and that I had the opportunity, because he was raised from the dead, I had the opportunity to be friends with him, which is how I thought of my relationship with him as a child. And that was really that amazing understanding that he loved me personally, and that was my first memory of that.
I think what sparked my wonder was my mom. I was raised in a home in Miami, Florida, and it was without Christ, and it was just, I guess like most homes that Christ is in, it was just a wild, semi-dysfunctional home with love, but no real boundaries or direction. And then when I was in the 7th or 8th grade, my mom came to know Christ, and it wasn't overnight, but it was a gradual progression and change to where 3, 4, 5 years later, she was a completely different person. Her interests, her desires, her drives were completely different. And so as I was progressing as a young man and going through college and some of my struggles, I always had one eye on my mom and how she had really transformed. And that led me to Christ as an adult. And then just through that, it really made me want to know what it was that changed her.
For me, I was raised in a Christian home, so it's really all I ever knew. And I don't take that for granted. I'm very grateful. Because of that, I have a really strong foundation. But it became more vivid for me when I was a teenager. Had awesome youth leaders that really poured a lot into me, and Christian camp was a really huge experience for me. And I think the best summer I ever had was working at a camp and really just figuring out what I believed, not because, I believe this because my dad told me to believe it, but making things more real in my life. And leading my first person to Christ was the scariest experience and also the most rewarding. So it was awesome. I'm really grateful.
For me, my mother brought me to church and told me this is what you're supposed to do my entire life. But my father never went to church, and none of the men in my family did. None of the men at all. So I went with my mom and my aunts and everybody. That's all, my sisters. So as I grew up and got married, that was when I really wanted to do something different and break the mold and be more of a man of God and follow the examples of the men that I saw in my church. So that was a pivotal role for me to turn things around and live for God more.
My turning point for me was when I realized that my life was bigger than me. Right out of high school, I had the opportunity to serve with a local home repair ministry called Ocoee Outreach. I began to see the joy in serving others and serving people, not because I had to or I was being paid to, but simply because I wanted them to see who Jesus really was. Even when my life was chaotic at the time, I wanted to serve others because that gave me the perspective that the world was bigger than my problems.
Well, for me, it's really living in community with others. I've had the great privilege of walking through this life with other people, and sometimes when it's difficult to see what the Lord is doing in my life, I can look at others and I can see his healing and his victory over sin and just his transformation and the peace that he gives. And when I can see that in others, I can see how he's using me to walk alongside them and encourage them. And that is just an amazing thing to watch. It's beautiful to see the Lord at work.
I think for me is when I catch a glimpse of someone experiencing true life change, and when they realize that Jesus can change everything about them, that it doesn't matter about how much I've sacrificed or serving, that it's worth it for someone to come to know the Lord and for someone to experience life change. That's why I do what I do.
Well, I think for us especially, we've had quite a journey. And I think seeing God's faithfulness through it all, even when it's been really tough, we've always had that hope and that assurance that He's got us in the palm of His hand, that He's taking care of us every step of the way. So for me, I just feel such a sense of peace and gratefulness and just in awe of God's love and mercy that He has given us and shown us throughout the years, throughout everything we've been through. And I just feel so excited, and I want to share that with others. I want to keep growing. I want to keep learning, so I can use all these experiences that we've been through. If God can use it and somebody can learn from it and grow from it, then it was all worth it. And so it's just exciting to be a part of the work that God chooses to use me. It blows my mind.
The thing that keeps me going all the time is the thought of letting my kids down. I have 3 daughters, or my wife down. I've raised them, taught them how this is what God says we should do as a family, as a kid, as a husband and wife. And then the thought of me walking away from that and just keeps me going every day. And the thought of letting all the other people down in my life that I've tried to be an example to, that keeps me going.
So I think what stokes the fire of my wonder, and that's a great question, because I really do feel like I'm in wonder at the blessings that Christ has given me. And it's that I've been through in my adult life some really great triumphs and some tragedy and some pretty heavy lows. And so through all that time, I've always looked back at how those things have gone through reflection. And I've gotten to realize that there were times when I put all my eggs, and this is really, really what I wanted. Man, I gotta get this. And then when I didn't get it, I'd be disappointed. And then when I'd go look back years later, I'd say, wow, if that had happened and I had gotten what I wanted, I would have never met my wife, or this wouldn't have happened, or I wouldn't have taken that job, and that job led to this. And so I like every year or so to sit down and really just trace the steps and how Christ has led me along this journey. And it's amazing when I see what a direct impact, He has literally grabbed me by the hand and pulled me to where I am. And when you know that Christ has a plan for you, and you are where you are because He's placed you there, it's awesome. I wake up every day just amazed that I'm here in Cleveland, that I'm in my house, that I have a beautiful wife, and that I have a job that I get to go to and try to pour out Christ's love on my kids. So that's it. Just really realizing that Christ is in control and has always been is what stokes my wonder. And I just can't wait to see what the rest of my life brings.